whether it is that person, the artisan who's making the jewelry, or the salesperson who's delivering customer experience in the store, she is operating at the highest standards of excellence.
When I was reading the book, the Tanishq story also came about how you transform a company. You became a much larger, stronger, better company. Give us a sense for lessons for CEOs, for leaders.
We wanted to create a film which held a mirror to the aspirations of our customers. And that's been an endeavor over time, that how do we stay a little ahead and become a mirror for the aspirations of our customers.
Hello, welcome to a BW Business World Dialogue. Today we are going to talk to Mr. C.K. Venkatraman, the MD of the Titan Company, the MD of Tanishq, about his book called The Tanishq Story. It is a fascinating story of a jewelry brand that dominates our hearts, minds, and adorns the women of India. So let me welcome Mr. C.K. Venkatraman, who's written the book, The Tanishq Story, today to the BW Business World Dialogue. Welcome, Mr. Venkatraman, and congratulations for writing this book.
Thank you.
Venkat, I've had the good fortune of reading this book over the last 2.5 days, and it's a fascinating account and a first-hand account of how the Tanishq brand and business has been built up. The Tanishq story. Why writing a book on Tanishq now?
Actually, it came out accidentally, I would say. I used to write pieces now and then on some subject or the other, and I got introduced to Chiki Sarkar, who is the publisher of Juggernaut. About 5-6 years back, I had shared some of the stuff that I was writing, and I told her about my interest in writing a full book on a subject which was close to my heart, which is about stress in corporate life and all that. And she gave me a very strange advice. She said, look, why don't you become known to be a writer first and then write what you want? Then I said, but how do I become known as a writer before writing my first book? She said, you write a book on a famous story. So I said, which story? She said, write a book on the Tanishq story. You'll get known as a writer, and then you can write what you want to write. And that's how this book came out.
Fantastic, and it's really come out well. Why should somebody read the Tanishq story? What's in it for them?
Very, very good question. And as I was, starting to write it and starting to put a structure to it, this was the most important thing that was running in my mind. Sure, I mean, Tanishq is a famous brand and all that, but what is there in the story that would be of use to me was a question that I saw it from the reader's point of view and discussed with Chiki and Devanshu Datta, who is the editor at Juggernaut. And as I was thinking about it, I realized that there are many things which made Tanishq successful, which continues to make Tanishq sustainably successful. Those takeaways would be of use to managers in general, and they could use those principles in whatever company they are in. And I've tried to make, therefore, the structure of the book with that point of view.
Fantastic. I think the Tanishq story is about entrepreneurship. The Tanishq story is about innovation. The Tanishq story is about, really creating value for every stakeholder in the stakeholder value chain. Venkat, we are talking and doing this interview on a Guru Purnima. The role of mentors in creating leaders like you in creating organizations is immense. And you start by talking about Xerxes Desai in the book and how he started the Titan Company, and the rest is history. Uh, so, before we talk about the Tanishq story, or as we talk about the Tanishq story, we have to talk about Mr. Xerxes Desai. Tell our viewers a bit about who he is and what is the imprint and the impact he's had on you and in building the Tanishq story.
It's not at all an easy thing to sort of capture him in a short time, but every bit of it is worth doing. So he was the person who founded Titan Company, who had this idea for Tatas to get into the watch business. He was the one who decided to go the quartz technology way when the whole country was all about mechanical winding watches. And he transformed the Indian watch industry through what he did with his deputies and co founders, in a sense, of this company. Visionary, iconoclast, humanitarian, humorist, so many things that he
Very
was.
entrepreneurial.
Of course, of course. And he could see a distant future in his mind and galvanize people towards that distant, exciting future. And even while Titan was succeeding in the watch business, he had the prescience to, in a way, redirect what they had begun as an export business in the jewelry category into a domestic operation. And he planted the seeds for Tanishq way back in 1994, which today seems so natural, but in 1994 were so path-breaking in that thinking. He was certainly my first mentor in the company, and he changed me in many ways. For many years that I had the fortune to work with him, certainly thinking big, in bringing design into the center of consumer businesses, especially those products which we use on our person, whether it is a watch or specs or jewelry or now bags or saris, how design is at the center of each one of these products. He taught us to be obsessed about the details which go into a product, that the quality that we need to deliver to customers. He taught us about the value of having humor at the workplace and enjoy work as opposed to get all stuffy about work. So he was our first mentor, almost God, I would say, at least in those days. But he was a very fun, kindly God that we had around us.
Beautiful. Fun, kindly God for a mentor. I am sure when some of the leaders in the corporate world, in the business world see it, they would learn from the example that Mr. Desai put out, and the legacy is lived uh, through the Tanishq story and the Titan company. But coming back to the Tanishq story, now you talked about how all men dream but not equally. The Lawrence Arabia quote. Uh, he had a dream to build a world class. You called it the you know
The Tiffany
Tiffany
of
of
the
the East,
East, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And today, as we speak, Titan as a company is $36 billion of market cap. Tanishq is India's number one jewelry brand, and in multiple categories, and growing, and that market is growing. So, how did the Tanishq story come about? You talk about design, detailing, and it started as an export business. You did stores. The design of the stores were initially not very welcoming, if I may use, and then you re-engineered it. And in the last 20 years, Tanishq has just gone from strength to strength. So give us a sense of what are the pillars on which the Tanishq story was created.
So it actually started as an export operation in 1993, 94. And we didn't really have the capabilities required for succeeding in the international jewelry markets. And it was a very saturated competitive space as well. And the company struggled to make it work. And it was a big investment for those days, the plant that we had set up in Hosur. And the Indian jewelry market, even then, was very large and in a way waiting for transformation, was for formalization, organizing, and all that. And the focus of the team moved to domestic, and they launched Tanishq in 1996 in Chennai through the first store. But at that time, the thinking was different. It was to create a brand which had 18 karat diamond jewelry at its center, Western styled designs, and there was a belief that we could leapfrog customer taste by a decade perhaps. And that was the thing that didn't really work in those first few years. Like you said, the stores were a little elitist and looked very, very luxurious. The Indian code for jewelry was all about store of value, traditional Bengali jewelry for Bengalis, Gujarati jewelry for Gujaratis, and so on, because the most important source of jewelry was weddings. So we, in a way, ended up misreading what the customers needed in those days, and we had some fortunate fork in the road that happened in 2000, some leadership changes that happened, and we were really in a spot. There were a lot of questions about should Titan at all be in jewelry, and should we be now shutting this down and moving on. And the team came in at the right time, I would say, in May of 2000. And you should read the book to see the rest of it. And the team totally reimagined many things, brought in belief, and gave the big breakthrough between 2000 and 2004. And the business took off, became profitable, became much more customer oriented. And thereafter, there was just no looking back.
The Tanishq story could also be the innovation story, right? From communication, the brand building, to the concepts like carat meter, to initially championing 18 carat but going to 22 carat. So tell us about the innovation milestones in the Tanishq story.
Yeah. So let me take the carat meter thing first. See, one of the big things at that time was that a lot of jewelry that customers bought was presumed to be 22 carat, but it was not 22 carat, it was 21 or 18 or 17. And there was no easy way to demonstrate to the public. While Tanishq had 22 carat at its core, especially around 97, 98, when we had moved into that, there was no way to simply demonstrate the multiple caratages that people actually owned, even though they had presumed that they had bought 22 carat. So the carat meter was a machine which was sort of spotted by, Mr. Shantaram, who was the head of manufacturing, in a Swiss fair. And they realized that it could be reconfigured to very simply demonstrate to customers the caratage of the jewelry that they had with them. So this was launched in 97 sometime and became a big rage because customers could come, bring their jewelry, and it was a free service at that time, bring their jewelry and discover that it was actually in most cases not 22 carat. And thereafter the team did in 2001 or so an exchange program which enabled customers to actually change that jewelry to 22 carat Tanishq jewelry. So this was the single biggest innovation in the history of Tanishq, I would say, which happened in 1997, and which it was uh, taken to the customers through the exchange program in 2001. So carat meter, exchange, these two things together dramatically changed the direction of Tanishq in that crucial period of 97 to 2003.
Now, the name Tanishq, I read how Mr. Desai also contributed to the name. And tell our viewers and our readers, how did the name Tanishq
Come about?
come about, and why the word Tanishq?
Yeah. So Mr. Desai was clearly looking for something. He was an aesthete of the highest order, and he had such an eye for the most beautiful things in life. And obviously, he was searching for a name that exemplified his own vision for this jewelry brand. And he had assigned it to a colleague in the team, and she had done a lot of research. And one of the names that she had circled out from a book was Nishka, which was a Nishka, which was from some other language. I think it was Persian or Arabic or something like that, and it meant a throat ornament, like a necklace. Like, and he somehow liked Nishka, but he made it in his first version. He cut out the K-A and put a Q and made it Nishk. And the Q suddenly gave it a very different feel and flavor and all that. And in a flash of, you know, brilliance, he added TA before that. And the TA is Tata, Tamil Nadu, both owned the company. And Tanishq.
It was a JV with the Tamil Nadu Investment Development Corporation.
Correct, which still is. So the Nishka became Nishk, became Tanishq, and then he doodled, and the doodles are in the book as well. And I think in his mind it sort of clicked. And the visual of the name, I think, reconfirmed to him that it's the right name. And of course, a designer came and gave that beautiful form to that visual later. So that's how Tanishq became Tanishq.
Beautiful. Now, you know, it seems very easy when it's done. And what's happened in the last 24 years seems very easy and logical. But every journey has its ups and downs. It has its discoveries of how you can do something better. The period from 2000 to 2004 was a little tough. And in the book, you have a chapter, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Why don't you tell our readers about what's in that chapter and what do you mean about when the going gets tough, the tough get going in the context of the Tanishq story?
Yeah, so to go a little before 2000, between, like, Tanishq was launched in July of 1996, and because of excessive focus on Western styled diamond jewelry sold in stores, which were a little elitist and luxurious, it struggled in that period. We had set up many franchisee stores, and the partners were also not doing very well. Even though the carat meter came in 1997 and was launched with a lot of fanfare and impact, because the product lines had not developed well enough to be acceptable to the customers, and we didn't have a method of converting the caratage problem into a solution for customers. There was still a struggle between 97 and 2000. And so the sales were poor, the franchisee partners were, disappointed, the teams were struggling. And in May of 2000, sorry, there was a leadership exit that happened, and that's there in the book for you to read. But many senior folks left Tanishq in May of 2000, and Mr. Desai was in a bit of a spot, I guess, because I don't have a first-hand account of that, even though I was in the company at that time. Meaning, I didn't speak to him for him to tell me this. So some of it is my imagination, if you will. But of course, we knew about the exit of that leadership and all that. And Mr. Desai reached out to one of my mentors, and the man and whose team actually took Tanishq out of this hot spot and made the whole thing change trajectory. Jacob Kurian, he was appointed the chief operating officer of the jewelry division in Tanishq in 2000 May, and he gathered around him a senior leadership team, and then he galvanized everyone around it and fixed some 3-4 big ticket things in customer acquisition, value, value for money, that is, manufacturing transformation and innovation, franchisee partnering and all that. And in a very short, I would say 18-month period, what was a very worrisome thing for Titan, the Tata Group, he just, and he and his team changed that trajectory dramatically, made the brand become really relevant in the Indian jewelry market, delivered profits in a very short time, and set up the path for that transformation. And there was a wonderful board that was there on his floor, on the floor in which Tanishq was, and I used to pass it every day as I walked up to my floor on the 7th floor, which said, through these doors or through this door walk ordinary people who do extraordinary things.
Beautiful.
And he institutionalized that kind of thinking among the leaders as well as the rank and file, gave them self-belief, gave them a sense of vision and purpose, and sort of the rest
It
is,
is
you should read the book, and I would not
give
do a
it all away.
spoiler
Give it
on
all
the
away.
yeah, yeah.
Now, since you talk about the leadership, the Tanishq story to me as a reader is also about leadership at various levels. Uh, Mr. Biju Kurian really contributed tremendously. Mr. Bhaskar Bhatt contributed tremendously. Of course, you in the last 30 years have had various roles, but in the last 5 years as the leader have contributed tremendously. Tell- uh, But the company was started and Tanishq was started by Mr. Zirexis Desai. And one should compare leaders. No two leaders are same. But tell us some special things about Mr. Biju Kurian. Tell us some special things about Mr. Bhaskar Bhatt, and how do they compare with Mr. Desai? What was similar? What was very unique to them?
One big thing about the leaders of Titan Company in general over time is the commonality in the values, not the commonality in their styles or approaches.
Beautiful.
And which are the most fundamental values? The first and most important thing is ethics and integrity. I think all of us were very, very obsessed about ethics and integrity and the right way to do business. The second thing is we were all joined together in our common belief in stakeholder capitalism, that which goes back to the Jamshedji Tata, J.R.D. Tata's founding principles of the Tata Group about how society is at the center of it and not happens to be one more stakeholder kind of thing, if you read what Jamshedji particularly said about it. So, stakeholder capitalism, which meant that the criticality of the employee as a key stakeholder, the respect, the dignity that you give to the employee, the respect and the dignity that you give to your partners in manufacturing, partners in sales, which are your franchisee partners, your distributors, your warehouse owners, your dealers, the multi-brand retailers and so on, the people who make your jewelry, the karigars who make your jewelry, the women in Hosur who assemble our watches and so on. So stakeholder capitalism was a second big value. Customer obsession was a third big thing, that everything starts from customer and the centricity of customers and all that. So everyone was joined in their views on these three big things. Thereafter, each one was very different. And actually, the world is a better place because all of us are different in these things. And therefore, Abhiju Kurian was a very frank, blunt speaking, uh, very efficient in his thinking kind of person, suffering no, bullshit, and suffering no fools kind of thing. Bhaskar Bhatt was a man to whom each person brought something good to the table, and he would happily ignore the weakness, as we call it, of every person, and then say, how does it matter if this person is not so good in this?
But he
Is
or
a
she.
is a Sehwag should focus on hitting out,
Mm.
or Dravid should focus on defense. These two are gems in those two things. Let Sehwag play to his strength and Dravid to his. Let's not try and teach each person what that person is a little bit weak, kind of thing. It's a very powerful view about people's strengths to the almost excluding their weakness. Don't even, meaning ignoring their weakness. Don't even think about it. Just play on the front foot on what you're good at. And Bhaskar had all the time in his life for people. So time for people. So these two things I picked up from Bhaskar. Just focus on somebody's strengths and try and give people all your time.
Beautiful. I think that's a management lesson. Simple as it sounds. Focus on strengths of your colleagues. Second is give time to them, because the highest form of respect is actually time and attention. Now, there are two big pillars that come out in the book. One is this focus on design, whether it's your stores, whether it's the unique designs of the jewelry. And design can create value. We know it from the iPhone, the Apple company, and many other leading brands and businesses whose design philosophy has stood them in good shape. Tell us a bit about how design and design first approach created the Tanishq story.
So in this, I'll have to go back a little to the foundation of Titan Company, where design, product, and quality built was actually at the foundation of Titan Company. And this is finally the legacy of Mr. Desai and the founding partners who came from HMT to work with him to build that product focus, obsession, detail into that whole thing. And it, in a way, followed into Tanishq. And at the time when Tanishq was launched, the jewelry industry in India was a lot more about the store of value. People invested in jewelry and gave it as three dhan to their daughters and the families for a rainy day, in a sense. So it was a monetary asset. It still is. It was not so much an accessory, a product that you wore to complete your attire
To make
and
a statement,
to make a
to build
statement.
a personality.
Correct. So the approach of Tanishq from day one was to bring the product into the woman as opposed to into the family. So the person who actually wore it, she had to fall in love with it. Therefore, from a understanding the woman, creating deep design stories, obsessing over the final creation of the product through karigari, engineering and manufacturing, depending on the kind of products, because over time it has evolved. There are today we use very high end CNC machine through engineering to create exceptionally detailed products which are engineered and manufactured, as well as a product which is simply a creation of an artisan, where it is all by hand, but where the enamel quality on the back of that necklace is so exquisite that it just boggles the mind. So it is at both spectrums, but at the center of both is the importance of design, the criticality of design, the criticality of symmetry, detailing, handwork or machine work or whatever it is. So that the woman who wears it when she goes somewhere, somebody looks at it, hey, that's an exquisite necklace or an exquisite shoulder duster. Which brand is it? And she says, Tanishq, ha, laga. So that impact, both for her from someone else and before that for her in front of the mirror, when she wears it and she feels the beauty of that product, that was there from day one of Titan and day one of Tanishq. But it evolved as we started focusing more and more on the customer around 2000, as opposed to more from the brand side in the early part of 96 and 97. And over time, through our investments in manufacturing, through our investments in partnering with big vendor partners in this country, and of course, a direct work with the karigars, the artisans who are creating those magnificent pieces, we have reached a very high level, I would say, on design, product, and its final impact.
And the experience in the stores.
Of course, when we began the stores in 96, there were boutiques fashioned after the boutiques of Europe, um, luxury stores, which were a little forbidding in some sense. But we realized what we didn't do well and opened up the stores early 2000. And today the stores are very welcoming, but they're a fabulous combination today. If I were to take, some of the stores, uh, in the last few years, for example, uh, we have uh, a concept today called the craft store. The craft store takes up the culture of the city or the state and renders it in the aesthetics of 2022, 2024. So it's very elegant and sophisticated to appear current today, but still is rooted maybe 1000 years back in its inspiration. So whether it is the Kakatiya dynasty for the Hyderabad, whether it is the Victorian Bengal and the palkis of the Bengali wedding in Kemak Street in Kolkata, or whether it is the Gond tribal art of the Chhattisgarh in the Raipur store. When you enter the Tanishq store, you feel connected because you're a Bengali, you're a Telugu, you're a Gujarati. So your culture comes alive in that store, but the representation, the execution is very modern, and therefore it's got a sophistication of your times, and it's not like dated in its version, and therefore it's a very modern brand, but rooted in your culture. So that is what we have now become very good at, and that really differentiates Tanish from all other brands as well. Everyone may have a very premium top end store, but this signature of being rooted in the culture of your state, that's unique to Tanishq.
Beautiful. Mr. Venkatraman, a brand, a story is about storytelling. The Tanishq story has been told through its print advertising when it launched, which was very bold, if I may use the word, especially in those days.
Yeah.
And subsequently, the communication, brand building, and you joined Tanishq and Titan as a advertising manager, right?
Tanishq Titan as the advertising.
Yes,
Yeah.
advertising manager. Then you became the head of marketing, and then, of course, you grow into various roles. Uh, Tell us about the marketing aspect of the Tanishq story, the brand building aspect of the Tanishq story. How over the last 2 decades, the brand Tanishq has really helped the, the business side, so to say. You know, the business has been built on the back of this huge brand called Tanishq. So, give us a sense of uh, what has gone into building the Tanishq brand.
Yeah, it's been a fabulous journey over the last 2 decades that I have been part of it, certainly, and I would like to illustrate it with two films and two strategies over time. The first one was in 2013 when we created the second marriage film, and we were actually getting into the wedding business and wedding segment in a big way at that time, and we wanted to create a film which held a mirror to the aspirations of our customers, and that's been an endeavor over time. That how do we stay a little ahead and become a mirror for the aspirations of our customers. And so the agency Low came up with this film, and it got modified through discussions with them along the way. And so this film is about the second marriage of a lady. And it was a very bold film for us to release in 2013 when we were just getting into the wedding business, and there was a lot of worries that the team had that, look, we want to make Tanishq popular in the wedding space. Is the second marriage the best way to make it popular? But somehow we felt that this was a special film, and it did turn out to be like that as we launched it and the reactions came. And this woman ended up, as it turned out, by the end of the film, having a child as well, which the viewer didn't know when the film started. And that second marriage film was a landmark film, and there was a lot of positive feedback uh, for the film and for the brand. It did not help us at that time to sell a lot more of the wedding jewelry as we were hoping, but it certainly, set the standard for what Tanishq would do over time as films and concepts of films meant. So that was the first film which many of readers may remember. The second one I'd like to talk about, which is also in the space of weddings, was in 2017, if I recollect, was much more mainstream in its concept, and the agency came up with a relationship between fathers and daughters at the center of this. And this film had five or six cultures: Bengali, Punjabi, Telugu, Kannada, Maharashtrian, Tamil, uh, fathers and daughters in a longish film. It was very, very vivid in its cultural moorings. So it's unlike the first film in 2013. This was so much about Punjabi jewelry, Bengali jewelry, and all that, but equally, and the rituals in those cultures. So it was a very mainstream film in its form, but in its
Emotive,
subtle, emotive
emotive,
messaging. It was again about
universal.
a mirror, universal, and it was about a mirror about, in a way, the new world of fathers and daughters, where fathers and daughters were friends. And I have two daughters myself, 31 and 27. And I remember when this film was shown to me, I saw it twice and I quietly turned away to the window in my room. And my colleague who came to
Presented.
present it, and she had, Deepika Tiwari was the head of marketing of Tanishq. She told her colleague, let's go. Uh, and the other colleague, junior colleague, asked her, but Venkat doesn't say anything about the film. Where are we going? She said, no, Venkat is crying into the window. That's his feedback to the film. Let's go. The film is like super fine. And they, they left. And I was actually crying into the window because I have two daughters, and that film, every time I see it now, I tear up because it just goes to the deepest part of your heart if you're a dad, and I'm sure it does to the mother as well. But this was made for fathers and daughters. It touches you, and so we've gone from strength to strength in the wedding space over the years. Yes.
Beautiful. You thank Balki. You in the end you also thank Santosh Desai. Uh, you also, as the Tanishq brand associated with movies, there's a certain iconic movie that you associated where you created jewelry for the era in which the movie was depicted. Beyond advertising, Tanishq, through the experience in the stores, through the quality of people in the stores, has also built the brand. Give us a sense of how have non-communication things added to the brand Tanishq.
Yeah. Let me start from the store staff that you mentioned. Without doubt, it is today one of the biggest pillars of Tanishq, and we've been working on it for 2 decades now, and the results are so deep and so institutionalized. And today, on top of that, we have overlaid digital. So what I would call, touch with tech. So touch is thousands and thousands of our staff members, the people who sell our jewelry in our stores, the housekeeping staff, the security people, the karigars in the stores
And 2 weeks back, when I went into a Tanishq
for
store,
Akshay Tritiya.
yeah,
Yeah,
I saw the Group 4 is a security agency, and those guys were helping inside.
correct, correct,
So they were very intertwined with your
very much.
retail colleagues, so
Very
to
much.
say.
So it's so nice of you to recognize their part in this as well. So all of them are connected to the millions of customers of Tanishq who have been our patrons over the decades. So that relationship where the staff have become behens and betis and bhanjas to the customers. And the customers come in, just do gupshup, drank their favorite bina chini ki chai or whatever it is in the store, and go away even without buying, because the store is no longer a shop for them. It's a place where their, you know, dost is or a behen is or whatever it is. So that is a big part of Tanishq. And then through digital, we understand, the special events in their life, the milestone anniversaries, the favorite kind of jewelry they buy, when they buy, and all that. We reach them through digital, through our call centers at the right time. So this combination of touch and tech is a big foundation of Tanishq, which others find very difficult to sort of mimic. That's one part of it. The second is what you said about the big films that we've been part of. We started in a small way with a film called Paheli in 2005, but the first big one was Jodha Akbar. Very fond memory. That was my first film, if I can call it, even though I had no role to play in it. But when I was in Tanishq. So the Jodha Akbar was a fabulous thing that we did, where we established Tanishq as a mainstream jeweler who was into Kundan and Polki and all that way back in 2007-8. And of course, the more recent one was Padmavat. In between, we also did Race 2. I mean, even though I've forgotten to mention that in the book, Race 2 was 2013 or 14, if I remember right. It was more modern, light jewelry for a younger customer kind of thing. But Padmavat, of course, was 2018. Fabulous work that the design team did. Again, strengthening the perception of mainstream jewelry from Tanishq side.
Absolutely. Now, when I was reading the book, uh, the Tanishq story also came about how you transform a company, how you pivot in tough times. And you have a chapter called Challenges and Recovery, which focused from the period from 2013 to 2019, where you had seen a growth and you went from strength to strength in difficult times, so to say. You became a much larger, stronger, better company. Give us sense for lessons for CEOs, for leaders on how to transform basis this chapter called Challenges and Recovery.
So between 2013 and 14, in those 2-3 years, we had big regulatory changes that happened with respect to the jewelry industry that really put big brakes in our momentum. Till then, between 2000 and 2013, we were growing at some unbelievable clip. Um, I think we grew some 16x between 2005 and 2013, for example. But suddenly, we had import controls on gold. We had the abolition of a very powerful credit facility that was available for buying gold. Uh, then we had a big regulation around the jewelry purchase scheme called Golden Harvest, which had powered our growth from 2005 to 13. And suddenly, from a 30-40% CAGR that we were doing for more than a decade or nearly a decade, we just we came to a screeching halt, if I can say, in 2013-14, and we had to reinvent, reimagine. But fortunately, we had the, I think, maturity to not get spooked and realize that this was not our fault. This was not our failure. This was in a way beyond us. A little bit like the COVID time, that the crisis was not our making. We were not responsible for making it. So we don't have to feel guilt, anxiety. And we just went about calmly to fix the problem in a sense. And it took 2-3 years to recover from that. And the we had to charge the employees, give them confidence, reassure the investors, all that we ended up doing. And everyone saw the sincerity, the authenticity in our points of view and our confidence as well. And they were totally with us. And they were convinced about the governance aspects of Titan Company. The board was with us. And everything turned out pretty fine over those 3-4 years. But we had to get used to a much slower growth rate in those 4-5 years. By 2019, we were back to what we were used to.
My penultimate question to you. The Tanishq story is a lot about the leaders within Titan and leaders at every level. It's about the employees, about the people. There is chapter centered on the people. Uh, and you yourself spent 34 years in the company. And I remember reading a certain para or a chapter where you were leaving and you're joining a FMCG, apparel company. And then how you stayed back and you said, "This is the family. How can I leave my family?" Uh, so give us a sense of why people have stayed so long in this company in an era where people don't last 34 months in companies. You and a lot of people have stayed long term in this company. So, what are lessons from the Tanishq story in the context of how people in the Tanishq story have been treated?
Uh, to us at Titan, and to me personally as well, Titan Company is an A team uh, across the board, which behaves like a family. So this is a very unusual combination, not easy to achieve, but we've achieved it and we've sustained it. So it's an A team. What do I mean by that? So in every aspect of the value chain of creation, it operates at the highest standards of excellence. So that's the A team part of it. So whether it is the store experience, like you said, the security guard in the store who's pitching in on an Akshaya Tritiya day to deliver customer experience. So whether it is that person, the artisan who's making the jewelry, or the salesperson who's delivering customer experience in the store, she is operating at the highest standards of excellence. To the leaders of Titan who are imagining the new future and everybody in between. So it's an A team at one level, which of course there are many companies which are A teams in a sense. But surprisingly and equally, it is also a family with deep rooted relationships across partners, across vendors, across staff, where each one pitches in to help the other. So it's a very large family of 70,000 plus people today. So that played out beautifully and spectacularly during COVID. So if I take the Tanishq story in particular during COVID, Ajoy Chawla and his team of Tanishq, Ajoy Chawla is the CEO of the jewelry division today, they in a way remained calm, just like I was saying. They realized that this is not a crisis of our making and we shouldn't get all worked up about the crisis. We should just focus on the people of Titan Company. Make them relax, make them confident, make them charged up that the only way is up. Because we were at the bottom of that in April of 2020. So they charged the employees, partners employees, gave them confidence, reassurance, didn't do anything to rock the boat in a sense. And those people brought Tanishq out of the woods because they were all calm. They were all charged about the future. So that quality of those leaders, which is at the center of Titan sustainability and Tanishq's continued success, is the leadership aspect of Titan, which is unique.
Beautiful. My last question. Someone who reads the Tanishq story, the book, uh, which is a story of building India's number one jewelry brand, but there's many more stories. It's about mentorship, it's about leadership, it's about innovation, it's about stakeholder management, it's about bold communication. Um, what should somebody take away from the book? What do you expect? I mean, like a painting, different people see different things in a painting. People see different things from music. You listen to a piece of music, and different people may have different emotions. What do you think a reader would get once he or she reads the Tanishq story?
The first thing is about the people of your organization. Actually, there is so much potential sitting with each one of us. Whatever college I've been to or not been to, whatever language I can speak or not speak, however junior I am. So, how do you build an organization which involves everybody in the organization in the larger purpose of the organization, innovating for the organization, as opposed to keep it exclusive to the leaders of the organization. So that's one very, very powerful thing that we have benefited from at Titan. And a lot of detail about that is in the book, but that is one message, which is people. So the chief human resource officer in Titan is not called the chief human resource officer. He is currently called the chief people officer because people are not resources. People are people. That's one big thing. The second thing is partnering. Deep belief in partnering. How do I take my partners in manufacturing, my partners in selling, other partners? Depending on the business you are in, the nature of the partners would be different. We are a retailing company, so we have partners for selling, partners for making. So all those partners, how do we create a system, a philosophy, a process for bringing them as stakeholders in strategy formulation, in customer problem solving? How do we give voice to them and take those voices in decision making? This is a second big thing. The third is that outside the stakeholders are communities where the company operates, the government, which is part of it. So, how do we respect the communities? How do we respect the government and what the government is trying to do? So, these pieces, if any organization solves, the stakeholders in a way take over, literally take over the business of the company and solves it for the shareholders of the company and deliver value that is exceptional. So you solve for the stakeholders solve for the shareholders.
Beautiful. I'm sure you're intrigued enough to read the Tanishq story, and I'm sure it will have some impact on you as a leader or as somebody who wants to make an impact in the right manner. Thank you, Mr. C.K. Venkatraman, for
Venkat,
writing this. Okay, I'll call you Venkat for writing the story, and I've enjoyed reading the book. I love the cover of the book. It's very clean, and the necklace really again conveys the story visually uh, to all the book aficionados and all the leaders who learn from books and implement. This is a book to read. Thank you. God bless you. I'm
thank you,
sure
Annurag.
pleasure is all mine, and I learned some things as an entrepreneur about how to build scale, how to stay in it, and as you take said, how do you make sure every stakeholder really takes over things, because that's when really you create magic, or they create magic, so to say. So congratulations. I'm sure it'll be a bestseller, and
Thank
I
you
don't
very
say it
much.
lightly. I'm sure it'll be a bestseller.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.